searching for reasons to stay the same, to hold on tighter, to keep everything exactly as it's always been. But somewhere deeper, in a place beyond logic, I know it's time. Time to make space, time to let go. I'm sharing this with you because I've learned that when you hold something like this inside, it grows heavier. But when you speak it, when you share it, it becomes lighter, even if just a little. And right now, I need that. I need you to understand what this moment feels like. So as you're listening, know that you're not just hearing words, you're hearing a turning point. Not a tragedy, not an ending, a turning point. And just like every turning point, it's filled with uncertainty, fear, but also a strange kind of hope. In a few minutes, I'll tell you why this goodbye has to happen. But before that, I just want you to feel what I'm feeling right now. The weight of a decision, the quiet before a change, the heartbeat of a moment when you know you're about to step into something new. Because this isn't just my story, this is our story. Every one of us will face a goodbye we didn't plan for, a goodbye we didn't want, but one that still shapes us. And when it comes, it's not weakness to feel nervous, to hesitate, to hold on for one last second. It's human. So here I am, speaking not as a businessman, not as an inventor, but as a person standing on the edge of a choice. My voice might sound calm, but my heart is racing. My hands might be steady, but inside I'm trembling just a little. Because in a moment, I will tell you what this goodbye is and why I have no choice but to make it. So why? That's the question, isn't it? Why say goodbye at all when everything looks like it's still working, when the world thinks you're still on top, when people expect you to keep going, no matter what? The truth is, sometimes the hardest part of success isn't starting something. It's knowing when to let go. Knowing when your presence is no longer helping, but holding back. Knowing when the thing you built needs space to breathe without you constantly standing over it. That's where I am right now. And it feels strange to even admit it. For years, my life has been about building rockets, cars, ideas, futures. Every time I thought, this is it. This is the mission that will define me. And for a while it did. But missions have lifespans, just like people. They're born, they grow, they mature, and sometimes they reach a point where you realize your role isn't to hold on tighter, but to step aside and let them evolve on their own. That's the goodbye I'm talking about. Not goodbye to life, not goodbye to the dream, but goodbye to the version of me that always had to be at the center of everything. There comes a moment when you have to ask, am I doing this because it's still the best I can give, or because I'm afraid of who I'll be if I stop? That question has been haunting me for months. And the answer, though painful, is clear. I have to step back. Not because I'm tired, not because I've lost faith, but because there's a bigger truth here. No one person is bigger than the mission. And if I really believe in the future I've been talking about all these years, then I have to trust others to carry it forward. That's the hardest part, honestly. Trust. Trusting that the people around me, the engineers, the dreamers, the leaders, can continue without me watching over every detail. Trusting that I don't have to be everywhere at once, solving every problem. Trusting that maybe, just maybe, I've done enough to give them the tools to succeed without me. And at the same time, I know this goodbye is also a hello. A hello to new challenges, new spaces, new parts of myself I haven't had the courage to explore yet. Because let's be honest, as much as I've done, there are still parts of me that feel unfinished. Still ideas I've been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to face. So this goodbye isn't just about leaving something behind. It's about creating space for something new. I know some people will see this as weakness. They'll say, he gave up, or he couldn't handle it anymore. But they don't understand. Letting go isn't weakness. It's one of the strongest choices you can make. Because it means you're not clinging to control, you're not ruled by fear, you're not hiding behind the safety of routine. It means you're alive enough to grow. Right now, as I'm saying these words, I can feel two voices fighting inside me. One is screaming, stay, don't change, don't risk it. People are counting on you. The other is whispering, go, trust, breathe, become something new. And for once, I'm listening to the whisper. That's why I have to say goodbye. Not because I'm running away, but because I'm running towards something else. Something I don't fully understand yet, but I know is waiting for me on the other side of this choice. And yes, it's scary. Terrifying, actually. To stand in front of millions of people, to admit you don't have all the answers, to say that you're stepping back when the world wants you to keep pushing forward. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Fear is a compass. If something scares you this much, it usually means you're heading in the right direction. So here I am, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude for everything this journey has given me, and gratitude for the chance to take the next step, even if I don't yet know exactly where it leads. This is my goodbye, not forever, but enough to change everything. When I said I have to say goodbye, I wasn't speaking in riddles, I meant it. And now it's time to tell you exactly what that means. I'm saying goodbye to the version of my life where I was everywhere at once, where every second of my day was consumed by projects, deadlines, launches, risks. I'm saying goodbye to the rhythm of constant pressure, constant urgency, constant responsibility that left me little room to breathe as a human being. But more specifically, I'm saying goodbye to my role at the center of it all, the man who couldn't miss a single meeting, the man who had to approve every design, every plan, every bold move, the man who couldn't allow himself a single day of weakness because the entire world was watching. That version of me has to go. Because here's the truth I've been afraid to admit. For years, I've been chasing so many futures that I forgot to live in the present. I forgot what it means to sit in silence without my mind racing toward the next crisis. I forgot how it feels to laugh without checking my phone every 5 seconds. I forgot that being alive isn't measured only in milestones and achievements, but in the small, fleeting moments you never get back once they're gone. And so, my goodbye is also about reclaiming those moments. I'm leaving behind the idea that I have to sacrifice everything, fire my peace, my health, my relationships, in order to deserve success. That myth is seductive, but it's destructive. And I've lived it long enough to know the cost. You see, success looks glamorous from the outside, but from the inside, it often feels like walking a tightrope over fire. Every step could be the one that makes you fall. Every mistake could burn everything down. And after years of walking that rope, you begin to wonder, is this really the only way to live? For me, the answer came slowly. At first, it was little things, waking up and realizing I hadn't seen the sunrise in months, because my nights bled into mornings without pause. Talking to people I cared about, only to realize I wasn't really listening, I was already mentally somewhere else. Seeing milestones achieved and feeling nothing, no joy, no relief. Just the immediate weight of the next problem waiting in line. And that's when I realized, this isn't sustainable. Not just for me, but for anyone. No matter how strong you think you are, no matter how ambitious, you cannot run at full speed forever. At some point, the engine that drives you becomes the engine that consumes you. That's why I knew a goodbye had to come. Not to the dream, not to the mission, but to the way I've been living that mission. So let me be clear. I'm not abandoning what I built. I'm not turning my back on the future, but I am stepping away from being the one who carries all of it on my shoulders. I'm handing it over to the teams, to the leaders I've trusted, to the people who've proven again and again that they're ready. This isn't a collapse, it's a transition. And transitions are always painful because they force you to confront the part of yourself that doesn't want to let go. I'll tell you something I haven't said out loud before. There was a night not too long ago when I sat alone in my office long after everyone else had gone home. Papers scattered across the desk, screens glowing in the dark, silence louder than any rocket launch, and I asked myself, if I walked away tomorrow, what would remain? The answer wasn't the numbers, the profits, the headlines. It was the people, the ones who gave their lives and hearts to the vision. The ones who stayed late nights, missed family dinners, put everything on the line because they believed. And I realized, I don't need to control them, I need to trust them. That was the turning point. That was when I knew this goodbye wasn't just possible, it was necessary. But let's not pretend it's easy. because even as I speak these words, there's a part of me that wants to pull back, to say, never mind, I can still handle it, I can still keep going like before. That's the addict inside me, addicted to the rush of being indispensable, addicted to the idea that if I step away, everything will fall apart. And yet, I know that's not true. The world doesn't end when one person lets go. In fact, sometimes it begins again. So, this goodbye isn't about failure, it's about faith. Faith in others, faith in the future. And yes, faith in myself, that I can be more than the man who never stopped working, never stopped chasing, never stopped proving. Because here's the deeper truth. I don't want my life to be remembered only in launches and headlines. I want it to be remembered in moments of honesty. In choices that showed courage not just on the outside, but on the inside. This goodbye is one of those choices. I don't know exactly what comes next. Maybe it's time to focus on things I've neglected. Maybe it's time to rediscover parts of myself I've buried under years of deadlines. Maybe it's time to step into silence long enough to finally hear my own voice again. Whatever it is, I know it's waiting, and I know I can't reach it if I keep holding on to everything I've been. So, here's my promise to myself and to you. This goodbye is not an ending. It's a beginning. A beginning that will test me, change me, and, I hope, make me better. And if you take one thing from this moment, let it be this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to keep fighting, but to stop, to release, to trust, to say goodbye, even when it breaks your heart. Because only then can you discover what you were meant to find all along. If you've listened this far, thank you, truly. Because what I've shared isn't easy for me to say. Goodbyes never are. But I want to leave you with something more than just my story. I want to leave you with lessons. Lessons I've had to learn the hard way, and lessons I hope can help you face the goodbyes in your own life. First, understand this. Saying goodbye is not weakness. We live in a world that celebrates endurance, hustle, never give up. And yes, there's value in persistence. But sometimes the bravest act is not holding on, it's letting go. If you cling too tightly to something, even if it once gave you meaning, you risk crushing it under the weight of your fear. Real strength is the ability to recognize when your chapter is complete and have the courage to close the book. Second, don't confuse identity with role. For years, I believed I was defined by what I built, what I managed, what I controlled. But the truth is, who you are is not the same as what you do. Your worth is not tied to your job title, your projects, your successes. You exist beyond those things. And sometimes, you only realize that when you finally step away. Third, make space. Space to breathe, to think, to rediscover what actually matters. We fill our lives with noise, deadlines, expectations, until there's no silence left. But silence is where you find yourself. It's where the answers live. Don't be afraid of it. Fourth, and maybe most important, trust. Trust others enough to let them carry what you can no longer carry alone. Trust life enough to believe that even if you let go, the world will not collapse. Trust yourself enough to know you are more than the roles you've played. And finally, remember, every goodbye hides a hello. You may not see it yet. You may feel only the loss, the ache, the emptiness. But give it time, and you will find that what looked like an ending was the beginning of something new. So, my advice to you, whether you're facing a goodbye to a person, a job, a dream, or even just an old version of yourself, don't run from it. Don't drown it in distractions. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. Let yourself feel it. Say the words out loud, and then step forward. Even if it's just one small step, because forward is where life happens. As I stand here, speaking to you, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what this next chapter will look like. But I do know this. I've made peace with the goodbye. And that peace, that's worth more than any trophy, any title, any headline. Sometimes people think that life is a straight road. You set a goal, you walk toward it, and when you arrive, you're complete. But that's not how it works. Life is a series of crossings, of detours, of forks in the road, where you have to decide, do I keep pushing forward the same way, or do I dare to turn? And often, The turn is where you find the parts of yourself you never knew existed. That's why I say, don't fear change. Don't fear goodbye. Because the truth is, you've already done it many times before. You've said goodbye to the child you once were, to the teenager who thought they knew everything, to the younger version of yourself who believed life would always look a certain way. Each time, it hurt. Each time, it felt like losing something precious. But each time, life and the lives of people around you, but that you've probably been taught to ignore, minimize, or dismiss as unrealistic. Today, I want to share what I know about you, because staying silent would be a disservice to the potential I see, and because I believe that helping you understand this quality about yourself could unlock possibilities that you haven't even considered yet. What I know about you that nobody else does is this. You have the ability to solve problems that seem impossible to everyone else, not because you're smarter or more talented than other people, but because you're willing to think about challenges in ways that bypass the mental limitations that stop most people before they even begin. I know this not from meeting you personally or learning about your background, but from the fact that you're here, listening to this conversation, which tells me something important about how your mind works and what motivates you to seek understanding rather than just accepting conventional explanations for why things are the way they are. Most people, when faced with problems that seem difficult or complex, immediately begin looking for reasons why those problems can't be solved, or why someone else should be responsible for solving them, or why the current situation, however unsatisfactory, is probably the best that can be achieved under the circumstances. But you're different. Something in your mental approach makes you curious about solutions rather than focused on obstacles, interested in possibilities rather than convinced of limitations, and willing to consider that problems exist because the right person hasn't applied the right approach yet, rather than because the problems are inherently unsolvable. This quality is rare, much rarer than intelligence or education or any of the other capabilities that people usually think determine success. Most people, including many who are brilliant and accomplished, have been trained by their experiences to see obstacles first and possibilities second. They look at challenges and immediately begin calculating why those challenges are too difficult, too expensive, too time-consuming, or too risky to address effectively. They've learned to protect themselves from disappointment by lowering their expectations rather than raising their problem-solving capabilities. But you've somehow preserved or developed a different approach. When you encounter problems, your first instinct is to wonder how they could be solved rather than why they can't be solved. You're naturally curious about what would be possible if the right combination of creativity, persistence, and resources were applied to challenges that others have written off as impossible. This doesn't mean you're naive about difficulties or blind to real constraints. It means you've learned to see constraints as factors to work with, rather than barriers that end all possibility of progress. Let me explain how I came to understand this quality and why I believe it's the most important predictor of whether someone will create something meaningful with their life, regardless of their current circumstances or background. The realization began when I started paying attention to the difference between people who accomplished extraordinary things and people who lived ordinary lives despite having similar intelligence, education, and opportunities. I discovered that the difference wasn't talent or luck or even hard work, though all of those factors mattered. The real difference was in how people approached problems when they first encountered them. Some people would see a challenge and immediately begin thinking about all the reasons it couldn't be addressed successfully. They would focus on everything that had been tried before and failed, everyone who had said it was impossible, all the obstacles that made success unlikely. Other people would see the same challenge and immediately begin wondering what approach hadn't been tried yet, what assumptions might be wrong, what combination of strategies might work where individual approaches had failed. Both groups were looking at the same problems, with access to the same information, facing the same objective difficulties, but their different mental approaches led to completely different outcomes. The first group would quickly convince themselves that the problems were too difficult for them to address, and they would either avoid the challenges entirely or approach them half-heartedly with expectations of failure. that became self-fulfilling prophecies. The second group would become energized by the complexity of the challenges and would treat apparent impossibility as interesting puzzles to solve, rather than evidence that they should focus their attention on easier tasks. What I realized was that this second approach, curiosity about solutions, rather than preoccupation with obstacles, was the common factor among everyone I knew who had built something significant, whether in business, relationships, community work, or any other area where they had created value that wouldn't have existed without their efforts. But I also realized that this quality wasn't distributed randomly among people. It was something that could be developed and strengthened through practice, or that could be weakened and lost through experiences that taught people to expect failure rather than success when they attempted difficult things. Most importantly, I realized that many people who possessed this quality naturally didn't recognize it in themselves, and therefore weren't applying it systematically to the areas of their lives where it could make the biggest difference. This is what I know about you that nobody else does. You have this quality, but you probably don't fully understand how valuable it is or how to use it more effectively to address the challenges and opportunities in your own life. I know this because of the choices you've made that led you to this conversation. You could have spent this time on entertainment or distraction, or any of the countless activities that most people use to avoid thinking about difficult questions or complex problems. Instead, you chose to engage with ideas that require mental effort, that challenge conventional thinking, and that might change how you see your own capabilities and responsibilities. This choice reveals something important about your character and your approach to life that you might not fully recognize. You're someone who believes, at least unconsciously, that understanding leads to better outcomes than ignorance, that engagement with challenging ideas is more valuable than avoidance of complexity, and that investing mental energy in growth and learning will produce benefits that justify the effort required. These beliefs, whether you've articulated them consciously or not, indicate that you approach problems with the same curiosity about solutions that characterizes everyone who has ever created something meaningful. But what you might not understand is how to apply this natural tendency more systematically to the specific challenges in your own life, or how to strengthen this quality so that it becomes more powerful and more reliable when you need it most. Let me share a specific example of how this problem-solving approach works in practice, because I think seeing it applied to a real situation will help you understand how to use your own capabilities more effectively. 3 years ago, I met a woman named Jennifer who was facing what seemed like an impossible situation. She was a single mother with 2 young children, working a job that barely provided enough income to cover basic living expenses, with no savings, no family support, and no obvious path to improving her circumstances. Jennifer had been told by social workers, financial advisors, and well-meaning friends that her situation was simply difficult and that she should focus on getting by day to day rather than expecting dramatic improvements in her family's prospects. Most people in Jennifer's position would have accepted this assessment and focused on managing their limitations rather than looking for ways to transcend them. But Jennifer had the same quality I'm describing in you. When she looked at her situation, she saw problems to solve rather than circumstances to endure. Instead of asking, "How can I survive this?" she asked, "How can I create something better for my children?" Instead of focusing on what she lacked, she began looking for ways to use what she had, her time, her energy, her concern for her children's future, to address problems that she was uniquely positioned to solve. Jennifer noticed that many other single parents in her neighborhood were facing similar challenges with childcare, transportation, and the difficulty of managing work and family responsibilities without support systems. Instead of seeing this as evidence that her problems were common and therefore unsolvable, she saw it as an opportunity to create solutions that could help multiple families simultaneously. She started an informal childcare cooperative where parents took turns watching each other's children during work hours and emergencies. She organized carpools that reduced transportation costs for families who couldn't afford reliable vehicles. She created a skill-sharing network where parents with different capabilities helped each other with everything from home repairs to resume writing, None of these solutions required special education, significant startup money, or permission from institutions. They required Jennifer to see opportunities where others saw only problems, and to take responsibility for creating improvements rather than waiting for someone else to provide solutions. Within 2 years, Jennifer had not only solved her own childcare and transportation problems, but had become a community resource who was helping dozens of other families manage challenges that had previously seemed insurmountable. More importantly, she had created a small business, providing coordination services for working parents, that generated enough income to allow her to quit her minimum wage job and focus on work that was more fulfilling and more financially rewarding. But what made Jennifer's success possible wasn't unusual talent or exceptional luck. It was her willingness to approach her problems with curiosity about solutions rather than acceptance of limitations, and to take responsibility for creating improvements rather than waiting for external circumstances to change. This is exactly the same quality I see in you, and it's the reason I know that you're capable of addressing challenges in your own life that might seem impossible to other people, including people who know you well, but who don't understand how your mind works when you're facing problems that matter to you. Let me tell you about a moment when I first recognized this quality in someone, because it illustrates how powerful this way of thinking can be when it's applied with intention and persistence. I was speaking at a conference several years ago when a young woman approached me during the break. She was probably in her early 20s, dressed simply, and seemed nervous about interrupting my conversation with other attendees. When she finally got my attention, she said something that stopped me completely. "Mr. Musk," she said, "I've been listening to you talk about solving impossible problems, and I think I know how to fix something that everyone says can't be fixed. But nobody will listen to me because I don't have the right credentials." I was intrigued, so I asked her to explain. She told me about a persistent problem in her neighborhood where elderly residents were frequently falling and injuring themselves during winter months because the sidewalks became icy and dangerous, but the city said they didn't have the budget to clear them more frequently. Instead of accepting this as an unfortunate but unavoidable situation, she had spent weeks observing the problem and thinking about solutions. She had noticed that the falls happened most often in specific locations where water from building gutters created ice patches, and that the timing was predictable based on weather patterns. Her solution was elegantly simple. Organize residents to apply a specific type of sand mixed with safe ice-melting compound to the most dangerous areas on a schedule that prevented ice formation rather than just reacting to it after it had already created hazards. She had calculated the cost, identified suppliers, created a schedule, and even designed a simple system for residents to contribute small amounts of money and volunteer time to maintain the program throughout winter months. What impressed me wasn't just the practicality of her solution, but the fact that she had approached a problem that everyone else had accepted as unsolvable with genuine curiosity about what might work, rather than resignation about what couldn't be changed. She saw the same icy sidewalks that everyone else saw, but instead of thinking, "This is dangerous and someone should do something about it," she thought, "This is a pattern that could be interrupted with the right intervention at the right time." That difference in perspective, seeing patterns that can be changed rather than problems that must be endured, is exactly what I recognize in you. The difference between using this quality effectively and letting it remain dormant is understanding how to apply it systematically rather than just occasionally when you happen to feel motivated or inspired. Most people who have this problem-solving approach use it sporadically, when they're facing crises, or when they stumble upon opportunities that capture their attention, but they don't use it consistently to address the ongoing challenges and opportunities in their daily lives. They might apply creative problem-solving to help a friend, or to address a crisis at work, but they accept limitations in their own relationships, health, finances, or personal development that could be addressed with the same approach they use for other people's problems. This is what I want to help you understand. The quality I see in you, the ability to find solutions that others miss, is not just for special occasions or dramatic situations. It's a way of approaching all of life's challenges that can transform everything about your daily experience and long-term outcomes. When you apply this approach systematically to your health, you stop accepting physical limitations or medical problems as permanent conditions and start looking for lifestyle changes, treatments, or approaches that could provide improvements that your doctors haven't suggested or don't believe are possible. When you apply it to your relationships, you stop accepting conflict, distance, or dissatisfaction as inevitable aspects of human connection and start looking for communication strategies, shared activities, or changes in approach that could create deeper intimacy and more supportive partnerships. When you apply it to your work and finances, you stop accepting your current income and career trajectory as fixed and start looking for ways to create more value, develop new skills, or find opportunities that align better with your interests and capabilities. Most importantly, when you apply this approach to your personal development, you stop accepting your current limitations as permanent aspects of your personality and start looking for ways to develop capabilities, overcome obstacles, and create changes that make you more effective and more satisfied with how you're living your life. The reason I know you have this quality is that you've already demonstrated it by making choices that led you to this conversation. You've shown that you're willing to invest time and mental energy in ideas that might change how you think about yourself and your possibilities. But what you might not realize is that this same willingness can be applied to every area of your life where you're currently accepting limitations that could be transcended with the right approach, persistence, and creativity. The difference between people who create extraordinary lives and people who live ordinary lives despite having extraordinary potential is not talent or opportunity. It's the systematic application of curiosity about solutions to all of life's challenges rather than just the ones that happen to capture their attention. You have this capability. What you need now is the understanding that it can be developed and applied more broadly than you might have realized, and the commitment to use it consistently rather than just when you feel particularly motivated. The problems in your life that seem most difficult or most permanent are probably the ones where this approach could make the biggest difference. The challenges you've been avoiding or accepting as unchangeable are likely the areas where your natural problem-solving ability could create the most significant improvements. What I know about you that nobody else does is that you don't have to accept your current limitations as permanent, your current problems as unsolvable, or your current circumstances as the best you can achieve. You have the ability to create solutions that others can't see, to find approaches that others haven't tried, and to make progress on challenges that others have given up on. The only question is whether you'll recognize this quality in yourself and begin using it more systematically to address the areas of your life where you most want to see